Tip number 1, free templates. You can get free template vouchers from completing the UGC Maple Guide in-game. Did you also know that there's a whole bunch of story quests that you can also get coupons in? Life Magic Study 3 at level 37, Dark Forces Study 1 at level 39, and A Long Parting at level 43. Another way to get coupons is your Be Fabulous daily missions. You have a chance to get them in the reward box at the end. Keep in mind that items you make with these coupons cannot be posted in the merch shop. To use a template coupon, simply create the design and you will be prompted if you want to use it or not. Just hit the checkbox and then you get your item for free. Tip number 2, automatically updating your textures. So I've talked about this plenty of times before, updating your textures without having to upload them every time you want to see a change. First thing you're going to want to do is hit the new button and it will open up the base texture in MS Paint. Nobody wants that. So what we're going to do is we're going to open where the file is saved with the folder button up in the corner. In there you're going to see where your new texture is that you just created. You simply just drag it and drop it down into your art program of choice. I'm using Paint Tool SI version 2, but there's loads of paid and free programs out there. So to update your texture quickly is simply draw whatever you're doing, hit the Save As button, and make sure you're saving over top the original texture. When you do that, updates right away in the game, no wasting time uploading it each change. Tip number 3, making custom icons. So a lot of people have asked me this one, making custom icons show up so they look nice like the items made here. So here's how you do it. It's pretty particular, so you're going to want to follow this as closely as you can. Once you complete your UGC texture and you're all happy with it, you're going to want to take a photo of it. To get the photo window up, you just hit this checkbox, and then you got yourself a little window you can move around. You can make the window bigger or smaller. Pretty much you just want to get the whole item in the frame so it doesn't cut off. Once it's done, the game saves the snapshot in the game's custom folder. It's labeled camera_icon. Open that up, check if the item's all in frame, looks good how you want it to look like, and then you drag it down into your art program. From there, you can just simply modify it to make it look like whatever you want it to look like. You can add a nice background and glow if you want, that's what I'm doing here. And then all you have to do after you're done is save it over top of the original file that it made, the camera_icon PNG there. After you're done with your new icon, go back into the game, but make sure you do not touch the camera or the model on the side in-game. Because if you do that, it will update the image that you just made, and then you're going to have to do it all over again. Just name the item, create it, and then you got yourself a custom icon for your UGC item. Tip number 4, housing items are infinite. I didn't actually know this one for the longest time. I was worried about making housing items for myself, thinking that I'd have to buy each one of them, but that's not the case. Once you create a housing item, you can use it as many times as you want. It'll be listed in the design tab of the housing furnishing menu, and then just place as many blocks as you want. Tip number 5. What programs to use? There's so many programs out there that people can use, and I'm going to show you some recommendations for free and paid programs. On the paid list, I would recommend Photoshop, Paint Tool SI, and Clip Studio Paint. For free programs, there's GIMP, Medibang Paint Pro, and Krita. If you watched me stream UGC before, you know that the program I normally use is SI version 2, but honestly it's up for you to decide what program is the right fit for you. I also use a webcam pen tablet to help me with the texturing, but that's not always necessary. I did a stream once where my friend replicated the texture in MS Paint with a mouse while I painted on my tablet at the same time. Honestly, it turned out pretty decent for using such a limited toolset. Tip number 6, how do you make amazing UGC textures? You just do. So many people ask me this question, and I'm not entirely sure I'm supposed to answer them. How do you make your art look better? How do you make your art look good? That's kind of subjective, and art is not linear, so sure, there's lots of tips and tricks that you can hear about and learn from, right? I've done some videos on them, and there's lots of other people who do awesome videos about other UGC or just art in general, but it's how you put it together, the process that you make, and the art that you create. I know that's kind of like a cop-out answer on how to make art better, but you really just gotta go at it. You gotta try. You can learn new things, you can see what works, you can see what doesn't work. And if you ask your favorite artists like tips and tricks, or watch them stream or see their art, you'll learn stuff. How I make my art is not the same that everybody else does, and it might not work for you, but I'll give you a few step-by-step tips of what I do, and then you can see if it works for you, and you can keep practicing to try to make your art end up like what you want it to be. 1, I make sure that I know what I want to do. Before I start making a UGC, before I start making a texture, I get references. I find ideas. I plan it out before I get going. Because if you want to be efficient, like I do, I try to be as efficient as I can. You don't want to waste time faffing about trying to figure out what you're doing in the middle of a design. Having a base and general idea of what you do before you start doing it is a good plan most of the time. Use what you have to your advantage. So if you're using the base textures from the game, use it to help you out with the shading, or change the hue and up the contrast so you don't have to do it all from scratch. You cannot imagine the amount of times that I've used like a pleated skirt template over and over again for the 100 of commissions that involve pleated skirts. Reuse templates that you already have, and use the stuff that they give you. Basic art tips. Shading is key. Shading is important, especially in a game where you want to have flat textures, but display the idea of 3D despite it being a flat texture on a 3D model. I've said this in one of my other videos. Essentially what you're doing is you're painting on a piece of paper and wrapping it around a box. To make that box look more three-dimensional than a flat surface, you're going to want to put shading on it. Another tip that I can say is contrast is important, especially in Maple. The lighting in the game tends to make things look dull, look too bright, look too dark. So if you have extremely high contrast on your designs, you're going to be able to point out different details of it, more so than if you have like 3 colors of blue that are very close to each other. It's going to be a lot harder to understand what's going on in that design when there's a big bright light shining on your character. Keep in mind the types of textures that you're making. So if you have a piece of wood, it's going to be different than a piece of cloth. If you have a piece of metal beside a piece of fabric, they're going to be different. How you go about painting those things is the important part. It's going to take some time to understand, but the best way you can learn about it is look at other art, or even take real-world reference of how lighting interacts with that type of material. Another important thing some people tend to forget is that since the character is moving around, that means the texture is moving around. Some parts of these models are going to be more stretched out at certain spots, like on the elbow or on the knees. So keep that in mind when you're trying to make the design, because if you got some very, very particular lines there, you might lose a lot of detail. Speaking of detail, every UGC texture gets compressed down to 512 pixels. No matter what size you're working on and testing in game, it all gets compressed down to 512 pixels. Keep this in mind when you're making textures for larger pieces of clothing, like coats and dresses. Since you got this small space to work on, you might want to keep it light on the detail unless you want a pixelated mess once you're done. In the end, it's just a lot of practice. You gotta practice at the stuff that you're doing and you're gonna make it look nice. You're not gonna get anywhere sitting on your butt not making any art. So you gotta practice, and I know you've heard this 100 times over, but you just gotta. There's no other way you're gonna do it. You just gotta practice. I believe in you.